which is to report, to interview, and to share the truth about what is happening. The people of Russia have a right to know about the thousands and thousands of casualties that the Russian Federation's forces are taking right now in Ukraine, as well as the civilian casualties and the widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure Putin is inflicting on the people of Ukraine. There are thousands of Russian mothers who will never see their sons again, yet the media in Russia is not allowed to share that information with the people of Russia, obscuring the real costs of this war. Those who dare to speak up are branded as liars, they're branded as traitors, and they are subject to prosecution. We stand with Russian citizens of conscience as they seek to exercise their rights to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. We will hold responsible those who engage in human rights abuses. We will ensure that credible allegations of war crimes are investigated and those involved are held responsible. To that end, as you saw earlier today, the Secretary announced a series of actions in response to President Putin's premeditated, unjustified, and unprovoked war against Ukraine and its people, as well as the Lukashenko regime's efforts to enable Russia's further invasion. This war does not reflect the will of the peoples of Russia and Belarus. Indeed, their respective governments' aggressive behavior abroad is coupled with systemic and increasing repression within their own borders. We are witnessing an autocratic attack on democracy. U.S. actions today include sanctions and visa restrictions on Russian and Belarusian officials and private individuals involved in human rights abuses, corruption, and repression. The United States and our partners and allies, we are committed to imposing massive, severe costs on those involved in the invasion of Ukraine. As Russian soldiers continue to die needlessly in Ukraine and the economic consequences of the war mount within Russia, the world remains open to genuine diplomacy. We will, together with our Ukrainian partners and our allies and partners around the world, continue to pursue every avenue to de-escalate the conflict, end the bloodshed, and save lives. Next, today we acknowledge the anniversary of the Syrian uprising. On this day, 11 years ago, the Syrian people took to the streets in the name of freedom, reform, and human rights. Bashar al-Assad responded to this peaceful call with brutality, sparking a war against his own people that has killed hundreds of thousands, displaced more than 13 million, brought food insecurity to some 12 million, and left 14.6 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. As we stand with the Syrian people, we continue our efforts to explore, to secure a nationwide ceasefire, expand access to humanitarian aid, achieve justice and accountability for the Syrian people, and reach a political resolution as outlined by UN Security Council Resolution 2254. We will not normalize relations with Assad until and unless there is irreversible progress towards that political solution. The Syrian people deserve nothing less after more than a decade of war. Before I turn to your questions, I just want to add one final element. I know all of us in this room were heartbroken yesterday to learn that our colleague, Ben Hall, sustained injuries while reporting from Ukraine. And today I understand that Fox News has announced that his camera operator, Pierre Zakrzewski, lost his life in the same attack. All of us know Ben. We've traveled the world with him. Many of you knew Pierre, who was renowned for his talent documenting conflict zones around the world. Our thoughts are with Pierre's loved ones, his family, and all of us here at the department are rooting for Ben and rooting for his speedy recovery. Ben's collegiality, his sense of humor, his wit, his warmth have always been a balm for the very tough questions that he would always hurl my way at the way of Secretary Blinken. I know I speak for the Secretary when I say that we look forward, once again, hopefully very soon, to being on the receiving end of all of those. We have engaged at multiple levels with Fox News. We have made very clear that we will do everything we possibly can to help Ben and any others who may have been involved and injured in this horrific attack.